Good afternoon and welcome to a session which is going to tell you everything that you want to know about tenses. So obviously when you're speaking English, we do have to focus a little bit on the fact that what we speak has to be in the correct tense, and there is a lot of confusion whether we are using the correct tense or not. So today we're going to look at all the various tenses that there are, and we will do it in a very simple way, and then we will also look a little bit as to what are the common mistakes that we tend to use when we are speaking in English. So first of all, I'd like to start off the session on tenses with the fact that there are two main verbs that we need to think about when we are talking about tenses, and those two main verbs are the be verb, and we also have one more verb, and that is the have verb. When we look at these two verbs, we use these verbs to make certain tenses in English, and that is why it's very important for us to be well versed with what the be verb is and what the have verb is. So first I'd break it up into present tense as well as past tense of the same be verb, and I will list it out according to the various subjects that we have when we speak in English. So I'll list out the subjects. We start with I, and we then go on to he, she, and it, and we have you, we, and they. Now in English, all the time, anything that you speak about, if it has a subject, it will be one of these. For example, if you're speaking about your pet dog, obviously then the subject then becomes it. If you're speaking about say Ram, then the subject is he. If you're speaking about your parents, okay, which is obviously mother and your father, the subject then becomes they. If you're speaking about your friends including you, then it becomes we, and so on and so forth. So in English, anything that you talk about when you talk about the word subject has to fall under this list. So we're going to then look at this be verb, and we're going to put it in the present tense. So I'm going to list it out, and you could take it down along with me. So I am, he is, she is, it is, you are, we are, and they are. So let me just repeat that. I am, he is, she is, it is, you are, we are, they are. Now if I would like to put this in a tense which has got something to do with the past, I will now have to use the same be verb in the past tense. So we're going to list it out side by side, and we will see that I was, he was, she was, it was, you were, we were, and they were. So this is the be verb in the present as well as in the past. Now on its own, sometimes you could make sentences with the be verb, and I'll quickly tell you where you could make sentences. The first one is when you're talking about the weather, the climate, and if you want to say it is hot, you're saying it, referring to the weather, is hot, or it is cold. So when you're talking about the weather, you can just use the be verb in the present tense. Also, when you're talking about your profession, you would then say I am an engineer, I am a student, and in the same way you're still using this be verb. Moving on to the next place where the be verb is used, it is also for feelings, emotions. When you are tired, you need to say I am tired, she is tired. So in these various places you will use the be verb either in the present or in the past. Now the other verb that we need to have an idea about what it is when we are talking about tenses is the have verb, because there are certain tenses that when we make them into a particular tense, we need to use this have verb. So the subjects are still listed over here, and I will put the present as well as the past of the have verb again on the board. So I have, and he has, she has, it has, you have, we have, and they have. So again, when do we use this have verb? When we say that we have a dog, we can use this have verb in the present tense. I have a dog, I have long hair, she has a car, and so on and so forth. So this is the have verb in the present, and we also need to look at how it changes into the past tense, which is I will go and move to I had, she had, he had, it had, you had, we had, and they had. So these are the two main verbs that we need to be very thorough about before we get into talking a little bit about tenses. Alright, so this is the be verb as well as the have verb. So now that we are very confident about these two verbs, I think we can definitely now move in to the various tenses. Now when we are learning tenses, I'm going to only focus on the main 8 tenses that you could definitely use when you're speaking without complicating the language of English. And what I would like to do is I'd like to break it up into the family of presents and the family of past and the family of future. And then I will also be telling you where you will use each tense. All right? So like I said, when it comes to the family of presents, we're looking at all the tenses that can fall into the present, the family of present tenses. And the first tense that we're going to work with today is present tense. And so that we know how it varies, we will take one verb and we will make it into all the tenses that we are learning today. Today, we are going to take the verb send. So this is the verb send, and very often you will be hearing the word infinitive verb. Infinitive verb is the pure verb without any changes being made to it. And for example, in this case, send is the infinitive verb or the pure verb. I will be using this quite a lot, and that is why it will be good if you remember pure verb, infinitive verb, and it is nothing but send. Let's take another verb so that we can understand. For example, go. Go is another pure verb or infinitive verb. And let's take another one, cut. Cut is also a pure verb or the infinitive verb. So we are going to look at how to make this into present tense, and we're going to start with, again, the various subjects which are already listed out, and we're going to say I send, he sends, she sends, it sends, you send, we send, and they send. Now, if you were to ask me when do I use the present tense, it's very important to understand when we use this particular tense, because there are a lot of mistakes also being used. For example, if you send a mail to your boss every day, it is your routine, it is your habit, it is something that is part and parcel of your everyday routine, you will have to use only present tense. Or for example, if you live in, let's say, Andhra Pradesh, you would need to say it in present tense. For example, I live in Andhra Pradesh. It would be incorrect to use any other tense. Now, very often again I said we will talk about common mistakes being used. So this is the most common mistake that we hear. A lot of times people use the sentence I am living with my parents. Again, because it is something that is routine, because it is something that is habitual, you should be actually using present tense, which is I live with my parents. So this is simple present tense, and to recap, it is used when it is a habit or when it is a routine of your life. Every day it happens, you can use simple present tense. Now I would also like to quickly work with telling you how this becomes negative. In fact, when you look at a sentence like I send, how would you make this sentence negative? And therefore I need to do I don't send, he doesn't, and here after doesn't we will have to put only the pure verb. That's why we said the pure verb is so important here, because doesn't has come to make it negative. This send will have to not have the S, and we will need to only make it with a send. So he doesn't send, she doesn't send, it doesn't send, you don't send, we don't send, and they don't send. So here again I want to point out another common big common mistake that a lot of people say, and that is he don't eat non-vegetarian. Now very often we hear this, and this is a very glaring mistake, because what has happened there is that this should not be don't, it should be doesn't. Why? Because it needs to agree with the subject being he, she or it. Another very common mistake that we hear is he doesn't sends a letter. Again, completely wrong, because the S should not be there, because we need to go on and use only the pure verb. So these two common mistakes, please make a note, and we should not be using these mistakes, and we should not be making these mistakes. So this is simple present tense, and we're going to now move on to another tense which is also in the family of present, and that is present continuous. Present continuous. So present continuous, we're going to still stick with the same verb, okay, the same verb which is send, and we're going to see how it will change into present continuous. Now remember, we learned earlier on in the session something called the be verb, and that's because we need the be verb when we're making present continuous. How does it happen? It is nothing but the be verb in the present plus the verb in the ing form. Ing form is nothing but, if it was send, the ing form is sending. If it was cut, the ing form is cutting. If it was go, the ing is going. So for that, let me look at how this has to be put into present continuous using the same verb send. So I am sending, and he is sending, you are sending, we are sending, and they are sending. All right, so this is how present continuous with the send verb will look. Now you may ask me, when do we use present continuous? Because a lot of times we're using present continuous when we shouldn't. So let me look at two main areas where we use present continuous. The first place is anything that is happening currently. For example, I am teaching you about tenses. It is happening currently, and therefore I can use present continuous. You are watching me, again, which is current, and therefore you are going to use present continuous. And of course, there's one more place where we can use present continuous, and that is for future actions which are confirmed. Now, for example, if I am definitely sending you a mail in 5 minutes, I can say, I am sending you a mail in 5 minutes. The reason why I can opt to use present continuous is because that action is confirmed, and to the person who listens to me or who reads my mail, they have a sense of I have made a commitment and the action is definitely going to happen. So very often we don't use enough of present continuous for future actions which are confirmed. For example, let me just give you one more sentence. I will go to my native place next week. Now that is a confirmed sentence. You already know that you're leaving for your native place. It's better for you not to use future but to use present continuous, which is I am going to my native place next week. Because that action is confirmed for the future, it would be better for you to use present continuous. Alright, now that we know this is present continuous, let us also look at how present continuous becomes negative. If it was a negative situation, how do I make it into a sentence? So let's start with again the subject I. I am not sending, he is not sending, she is not sending, it is not sending, you are not sending, we are not sending, and they are not sending. So quite simple, all you have to do is put a not in the sentence, and that's what makes it negative. So now that we've finished two tenses, present tense for habits, routines, present continuous for on the moment, at the moment actions, and for future actions which are confirmed, we can now move on to the next tense, and that is present perfect. So we're going to move on and talk a little bit about present perfect, another lovely tense which is not used that much because perhaps people are not too comfortable or not too sure when to use it. So there are various reasons places where you will use present perfect, and I'm going to start off talking to you about the first place. Now when you're using present perfect, now you need to use it with the have verb in the present, and we are needing to use it along with not the pure verb, but we need to use it with the past participle of the verb. Now sometimes you can get a little confused. What is this past participle? It is just another form of the verb, just like this was the pure form, and then we also talked about the ing form. Here we need to use the past participle form. Now I'll give you a few examples of the past participle form. For example, send, the past participle becomes sent with a T, and if I used the verb go, past participle of that becomes gone. One more verb, let's take for example cut, past participle, it remains the same, it becomes cut. And one last one, let's take for example see, the past participle of that is seen. So this is what I mean when I use this word past participle. So we have to now take all the subjects and we need to make it into present perfect, have verb plus the past participle. So I have sent, he has sent, she has sent, it has sent, you have sent, we have sent, and they have sent. So let's talk a little bit about why we would need to use present perfect. Now first of all, the first place where present perfect is used is when the action has just been completed. For example, if I shoot out a mail to my boss and he calls me and he says, "Where is the mail?" I can definitely tell him, "I have sent it." I have sent it, he knows now that it has just been done. For example, I have bought a car. I have bought means it is just very, very recently been done. When I say recently, it could be 10 minutes, it could even be a couple of days ago, and then you can definitely use present perfect. Another place where you will use present perfect is when you want to have a timeline in the sentence. Now by that I mean, if I want to say I have lived in Chennai for 20 years, the 20 years now is a timeline. And if you notice, I have put that sentence in present perfect. I have lived, which is again have verb, past participle, in Chennai for 20 years. And that 20 years, because I have used a time frame, timeline, I need to put the sentence into present perfect. So very often when you're making sentences and you know that there's a timeline, for example, I have waited for 10 minutes. Again, because 10 minutes is there, I can put the sentence into present perfect. So this is how we have to make present perfect, and you also know where to use present perfect. We have just one more thing to do before we move on, and that is, how do I make this negative? So let's start with I. I have not sent. He has not sent. You have not sent. We have not sent. And they have not sent. So if you had to make something negative, for example, I have not sent the mail. Again, this is the way of making a sentence in present perfect negative. So let us just quickly recap all the three tenses that we have learnt in present. Present tense, regular action, habitual action. Present continuous, current action, and sometimes for future actions which are confirmed. Present perfect would be when you're trying to have a timeline in the sentence, and also for actions that have just been completed. Alright, so with this we are done with the family of presents, and we are now going to move on to the family of pasts. So we're keeping the verb the same, which means that send is the same verb that we're going to put in all the family of the pasts. And we're going to start with simple past tense. A simple past tense, and if I want to ask you when will we use it, it is for an action which has been completed. Now when I say completed, past tense is a wonderful tense because you could use it for an action completed one day ago. It could be a year ago, and you're even safe if you want to use past tense for something that happened 10 years ago. So that's why it's a very common tense that we use, and you're absolutely right even if you use it in any of these three scenarios. So let us take send, and we're going to put it in simple past. So I, and simple past for the send verb becomes sent. Remember, this is not the past participle, but this is the past tense of the verb. Let's take one verb and just try to see what the difference of past tense and past participle is. Let's take the verb go. For the past tense of go, you will have to use went. For the past participle of go, you need to use gone. Let's take one more, see. Past tense, saw. Past participle, seen. So we are using here the past tense of the verb, and here send is sent. It so happens that for this verb, past tense and past participle is the same, and sometimes even in other verbs it is the same. But don't get confused, because the past tense of a verb is one sometimes and the past participle is something completely different. So I sent, he sent, she sent, it sent, you sent, we sent, and they sent. So if you want to say that you sent a mail yesterday, you could very well use past tense. If you want to say you sent it last week, you could very well use past tense. And if you want to say that you sent something last year, you can actually still use past tense. So it's a wonderful tense, and it can be used in all these places. Alright, now we're going to move and see how we would need to make it negative. Now be careful with making it negative, because even when we make past tense negative, we need to bring in the pure verb. So how does it become negative? you need to make it negative by putting the did not or didn't. I didn't, and we're going to again need the pure verb. Yes, don't forget, we will not say I didn't send, we need to say I didn't send. Again, let me just tell you one more common mistake that we then generally do is, for example, a person will say I didn't went to the bank. Instead, it should be I didn't go to the bank. So again, we use the didn't with the past tense. Instead of that, we should be using didn't with the infinitive or the pure verb. All right. So let's see how it changes for all the subjects. I didn't send. He didn't send. You didn't send. We didn't send. And they didn't. And they didn't send. So this is how past tense becomes negative. All right. Don't forget, it is with the pure verb and not the past tense of the verb. All right. So once we have done with this, we need to move on now to the next past in the past family, and that is past continuous. So do recall how we learnt the past tense of the be verb. Remember, it was or were, and we need to use it with the ing of the verb. For example, here it's send, so it will be sending. So let's make it into all the subjects. I was sending. He was sending. And you were sending. We were sending. And they were sending. So this is how we will use past continuous, the past tense of the be verb and the ing. Now very often you may be worrying where to use past continuous. So when an action is happening continuously for a long period of time, we can definitely use past continuous. I'll give you a few sentences. For example, I was studying in that college for 2 years. When you use was studying, automatically you get the meaning that it was happening over a period of time. Or for example, I was working in that company for almost 10 years. I was working, showing that for a long continuous time that action has been happening, and that is why you will use past continuous. Now another tip I will give you is when you are using past continuous along with past tense, even there will be a lot of clarity in what you're trying to say if you try to join the two tenses. For example, if I had to say I was walking down the road and I met my friend. Immediately by using this combination of both these tenses, you understand that while one action was happening, another one happened. For example, I was walking, past continuous, and I met my friend, past tense. I'll give you one more example. I was eating my lunch and the phone rang. I was eating my lunch, past continuous, and the phone rang, past tense. Immediately by that you know that one action was happening and then another action happened at the same time. Now in a lot of mother tongues, the tendency is to use this at the same time or at that time very often. Now you don't really need to use those specific words, because if you combine these two tenses, past tense and past continuous, you can actually eliminate those words at the time or at that time, and it's not really required to use those specific words. It's understood when you change and merge these two tenses together that was what was happening. This action was happening and at the same time the other action was happening. So this is past continuous and we need to know how to make it into the negative. So let's look at it. I was not sending. He was not sending. You were not sending. We were not sending. and they were not sending. This is how past continuous is put into the negative. Alright, so we've done 2, past tense and past continuous. We have one more to go, and that is a tense called past perfect. So remember, we learnt about the have verb and we talked about how it became negative. How did it become, sorry, not negative, past? We said that it became had. So this is going to be used in this tense, and of course the past participle. Again, reminder, past participle for send is sent. So let's start. I had sent. He had sent. You had sent. We had sent. And they had sent. So when do we use past perfect? Now past perfect is for actions which have long been over. Long been over means they've happened a long time ago. Now for example, let us assume that an old uncle had passed away a long time ago. You can say, my uncle had died 10 years ago. It is okay to use past perfect for actions that have happened a long time ago. How would you need to make this negative? I had not sent, he had not sent, she had not sent, it had not sent, you had not sent, we had not sent, and they had not sent. So with this, we are done with the family of presents, the family of pasts, and we have one more family, and that is the family of future. And we're just going to do that because it's quite simple. And we'll also look at when we use these various tenses of future. So let us start with now the main tense for future, or future tense as we call it, and you will hear that word will. So when you're using future tense, remember we use this will and we use the pure verb. Again, it has to be only the pure verb. Pure verb or infinitive verb will have to come with will. So let us start with the subject I. I will send, he will send, she will send, it will send, you will send, we will send, and they will send. And of course, if you would like to know when to use future tense, it is used for actions which are going to happen. Now going to happen, I mean in the future. Now remember, the future is uncertain, and when there is uncertainty, it will be nice to put the sentence into future tense. If it was a certain action that is happening, or a sure action which was going to happen in the future, as we said earlier, it would be better then to put that sentence into present continuous. Remember, I am sending, as opposed to I will send. So do remember that, and this is only for uncertain actions, obviously, which are not 100% sure. You will definitely use only future. Now, how will I make this into the negative? You say I will not send, and very often we use the word won't. Now won't, don't get confused, won't is nothing but the abbreviation of will and not. So just for us to learn something new, maybe we will take this off, and instead of will not, we will put won't. I won't send, he won't send, she won't send, it won't send, you won't send, we won't send, and they won't send. So this is future tense, and we also talked about when we will use future tense, so that's also been done. And we need to talk about one more tense in the future, and that is future continuous. Now you can find a lot of people, especially in India, using future continuous. I will be seeing, I will be going, I will be walking, and we tend to like this tense quite a lot. So let's just work with future continuous, which is nothing but will plus be plus, of course, the ing of the verb. Alright, so how will it come in the tense? I will be sending you. When are you coming to the office? I will be coming in 10 minutes. Immediately we tend to use future continuous. Okay, so he will be sending. You will be sending. We will be sending. They will be sending. And when do we use this again? When the action is again happening continuously in the future. I will be walking in the park for the next 50 minutes. So when you say that, because it's happening continuously for 50 minutes, you can use future continuous. Very simply, how will you make this negative? Very simple. I will not be sending. I will not. So we just take will not out, and again we will try to put the won't in. I won't be sending, and don't forget won't is nothing but will not. He won't be sending. You won't be sending. We won't be sending, and they won't be sending. So with this we have completed all the 3 families of tenses, which is present, present tense, present continuous, present perfect, past, past tense, past continuous, past perfect, and future tense and future continuous. So let us just now look at one more important tense in relation to, now all these tenses that we looked at, these are all normally active tenses. And we also need to look at one more thing, which is passive voice, and the 2 tenses that there are in passive voice. Now remember, passive is nothing but when the action is not happening directly by the subject, which in that case would mean that some third party is doing it. For example, the bridge was built. Now if you look at that sentence, the bridge is not the subject. Why? Because it cannot build on its own, and there is a third party angle to it. Somebody else is doing the action of building. Could be by the government, could be by the corporation. So there I can say the bridge was built, or I can say the bridge was built by the government. So that is what passive voice is. It is basically when we are not going to say that the action is done by the subject, but it's going to be done by some third party. Alright, so very often when you're using passive, you will only tend to use this subject, it, and if it is plural. So for example, if you were talking about the table, and if you were talking about tables, then they would become subject as they. So that is why most of the time in passive you only have it and they. We are still working with the verb send. Let's use the same verb, send, and let us look at the various tenses that's the passive can come in. Alright, so let's first look at present passive. So how will it come? The email is sent every day. Now if you look at this sentence, the email cannot send itself. It's being done by some other party, and that is why this tends to be how you look at it as passive voice. And how we have made passive in the present is we have used the be verb in the present tense, and we have used the past participle. So again we are going back to that past participle, which is nothing but sent. And how we have made it is the email is sent every day. Now what is the concept of passive present? Anything that happens regularly or habitually or as a routine. In passive you can use passive present. For example, the school is shut at 4 o'clock every day. Again it's a habit, and again the school can't shut itself, the authorities have to shut it. So there you will use is plus the past participle, is sent, is shut. Now one more angle to passive is passive past, Now this will be the email was sent yesterday. Now if you look at that sentence, you have a look. This is nothing but past tense of the be verb and the past participle. So what you're going to see is, instead of using be verb present, you have used be verb past and then past participle. Now what is the angle to this is that the action is over, and that is why you're using passive past. Now one more angle to passive is when it is continuously happening or currently happening. So how will I make a sentence like that? The email is being sent. What I have done is, I have used the be verb, okay, which is be verb present. I have used the be verb in the present plus the be verb ing plus the past participle. Alright, so for example, the email is being sent. Now similarly, if you want to make this past continuous, this needs to change. Obviously only this be verb needs to change to be verb past, and what I will say is the email was being sent. This is happening currently, is being sent. I'm sorry. Okay, this is if it's happened, and the email is being sent if it is currently happening. All right. One, and this is the last angle to passive, is again we want to look at that if the action has just been completed, again in the passive voice, and that was the email has been sent. Now for this, remember, we use the have verb in the present plus past participle of be verb plus the past participle of the verb sent. All right, I'll give you one more sentence for this. The metro has been built. Again, for example, the email has been sent. So just four different angles to passive. One is the email is sent every day, okay, indicating that it's a regular action. The email was sent yesterday means that the action is over in passive. The email is being sent, currently happening, was being sent, it's over but continuously happened, and this one is just happened. The email has been sent. So these are the different ways in which you can put passive voice into the various tenses. So we have completed now all the tenses, and perhaps what we can do now is we will talk a little bit about some of the common mistakes that we tend to use. So let us look at the first sentence. If I can just put it up over here so that you can also see it. So one very common sentence we hear a lot is, I done my work, or I gone to the bank. Now remember, if you are using gone or if you are using done, these are all past participles, and generally when you are going to use any tense, you will never get a past participle on its own. It will only come with the have verb, which we learned just now, present perfect, past perfect, or it will come with the be verb if it is passive voice. So this is technically a wrong sentence, and it should not be I done my work. It should be either I did my work, past tense, or if you want to say recently you finished it, you can actually use I have done my work, or I have gone to the bank. So this is a very common mistake that we hear a lot of people use when they speak. Okay, one more common mistake, and that is I used to brush my teeth every day. So I used to brush my teeth again. Remember, when we are looking at everyday actions, what was the tense that we needed to use? We needed to use present tense, which means that we need to say, I brush my teeth every day. Now, used to, we don't need to use it at all. We tend to find a lot of people saying used to for current actions or habitual actions, but we don't really need to use it at all. If you're using used to, when can we use it? It is for an action that used to happen, but not anymore. For example, if you used to live somewhere and now you live somewhere different, then you could say, I used to live in Andhra Pradesh, or I used to live in Delhi. Not anymore means now you are living over here, or now you are living in another place. Then you can use used to, but otherwise you don't really need to use used to, especially for an action that happens every day. Okay, one more sentence. I am coming to class every day. Alright, so again over here, I am coming to class every day. You may feel that because it's happening every day, I should put it in continuous, but here it's completely wrong, because every day has come in the sentence, and therefore we need to know it's a regular action, and this should definitely not be in present continuous. Instead, it should only be in simple present tense, which is I come to class every day. Simple present tense. Yeah. Okay. Let's do one more sentence. I will meet my doctor at 4 p.m. Now here, because you see a time has been given, obviously the person has an appointment with the doctor. It is not required, and even though 4 p.m. is still going to happen, no problem. It's not yet happened, it's going to happen, so you've put it in future. But here, because you obviously have an appointment, it is confirmed, it's almost like there is no doubt in the fact that you're going to the doctor, it would not be required to use future tense. So avoid future tense here, and instead you can use I am meeting my doctor at 4 p.m. And I'll give you one more alternative. In fact, we could have done it even when we were doing future tense, and that is I'm going to meet. Again, going to shows a lot of positivity, and it shows a lot of confirmation in that action. That means the action is going to definitely happen. I'm going to have my dinner at 8 o'clock. So you know that it's going to happen. Rather than using I will have, you can say I'm going to have, or I am having my dinner at 8 o'clock. Okay. All right, let's look at one more sentence. I shall be late. Now here, if you look at the sentence, we have seen that a lot of people use shall, thinking, okay, I'm going to be very polite, shall sounds so nice. But remember, shall cannot really be interchanged with the word will. Now, when you say that you shall be late, it's not now, because you will be late, it's going to happen in the future. So therefore, this is a future tense sentence. But try not to use the word shall. In fact, to use the word shall is incorrect. Rather than shall, you need to be using I will be late. And if you know for sure that you're going to be late, that means if you're in a traffic jam and the time is over for you to have reached somewhere, you're better off saying I am going to be late. All right, and that would be the correct way to use it. Try not to use the word shall. So as you keep listening to my explanations, and I could also answer any questions that you have. Okay, so I have one question, which is when should we use should have been. Okay, when shall we use this should have been? Now, one important thing to remember is when you're using should, please do remember that that word shows compulsion. It shows something that is compulsory, it shows something that is mandatory, that has to happen. So, if you look at this sentence, it is a present perfect, and this is something that has put into the sentence to make it mandatory, to make it compulsory. So, for example, I will say this, use this when I tell a person, your homework should have been on my table. Let me write it. Your homework should have been on my table by now. So, let us just quickly look at what this sentence is. This sentence is passive. Homework cannot reach my table on its own. You would need to put it on my table. So, therefore, that's why this have has come and this been has come. Remember, we talked about something that is not happening directly by the subject. You need to put it in passive. And the should comes in, that means it is mandatory. So, you should have been at my office, you should have been here by now. I need to use this when the sentence is mandatory, when it is compulsory. Then you will need to use should have been. Yeah. The other question was, somebody has asked, she's married with a dentist or to a dentist. All right. So, when you're using married always needs to come married to someone. So, the preposition that we have to use with married or married, I'm getting married to a doctor, I'm getting married to that person. So, married needs to come with to and not married with someone. Yeah. Let me take the next question, which is, when should we use would have been and what is the difference with should? So, would, somebody wants to know what this would have been is and what is the difference between would and should. So, remember, should is compulsion and would is a lot of times would is the past tense of will. Okay. Would is the past tense of will. Now, what I mean by that is, this would have been a nice movie, and there you will have to say if the actor was different. Would have been is about what if something could happen, then you'd need to use would have been. So, I would have been happy, and then you'll need to use if. I would have been happy if you came to see me. So, this would have been is in the scenario of what if something could happen. It's about the future, but you're going to actually look at if this could happen, then what if. So, that is why this would will come, not will. Now, what is the difference between should? This is compulsion, this is not compulsion. This is only about what if with the aspect of what if something could happen. I would have been an engineer if my father had allowed me. So, would have been is something that would have happened in the future. Again, is that if probability also is coming into the scenario. So, it's not at all the same as should. It may sound like should, but it has got nothing to do with should. Should is compulsion and would is not compulsion. Now, would also, let me just tell you quickly, would also can be used if you're politely requesting somebody for something. Would you like some coffee? You see, there also I use would, but it's got nothing to do with the future or the present. It's only about a request. Would you like some coffee? Sometimes you will also hear people saying, would it be possible for me to take leave? So, here would is a request. Would you like coffee? And sometimes have a look at this one. Would it be possible to have some water? So, if you look at this, this is a request, this is also a request. This is about what if the probability factor, and then you could use would have been. Yeah. All right, and what is the necessity of been in the above question? So here the been is because the action may or may not happen by the subject. For example, it would have been. Now for example, you're talking about the situation here rather than I, right? So sometimes when you use this been as we said is for passive voice. Passive voice means you sometimes don't have control over certain situations. Something else is determining the situation, and that is why this been has been put in, so that you can understand that it is passively happening. It is not really entirely in your hand. That is why it makes the situation probability and probable. It's not 100% in your hands. For example, you can say I have eaten. It's in your hands. You have eaten. But this has got not much in your control because I would have been. It's not entirely been in your hands. Something else could have had some role in it, and that is why you're using I would have been a doctor if my father had allowed me. So some other party is in the equation, and that is why the been would need to come. Yeah. Okay, if you're talking about this request, would you like coffee and would it be possible? These are all about requests that are happening for something that is going to happen. It's not about already over, because if I want water, it's not yet over, and that's why I'm requesting for it. So this is all about things that are going to happen. So even though I said earlier would is the past tense, but if in a request form, it has got nothing to do with the tense. It is only there because it sounds better than can, and you therefore use would. Sometimes you can also use could. Could is also a request. So could, would, can, all these are request words. It doesn't have anything to do with a tense. Yeah, it's only there because it sounds polite, and that is why we are using would. So it's got nothing to do with the tense, and it is about a request that is going to happen. The request has not yet happened. Okay, so how do I learn basic English and how do I avoid nervousness? So obviously the good news is that BTech Guru of course has a communication skills class or course that is specially going to be conducted, and you're most welcome to go on to the website btechguru.com. The course actually is starting. The good news is that it's starting in a week, and please note the course is starting in a week. That's in present continuous, indicating that it is confirmed that it is happening, right? So that's just something that I thought you can I could point out. And the other good news is that there are some great discounts which are up for grabs. So if you are interested in joining this hands-on class where a lot of questions will be answered online, and we'll have an interactive session, please do get onto the website, have a look at it, see what details that you would like. You can always mail the people on BTech Guru, and they will give you all the other details that you require. All right, so very good evening from my end. I hope you were able to understand a little bit about tenses, and I look forward to seeing you all in the future.